Okay, happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project. Hopefully community members will see this and join us for this morning's conversation because, man.
Yeah, it's a big one. Even if they don't, I've got pages full in my notebook of stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, well, before we get into our community discussion today, and even give you guys a few minutes to see that we're even here.
Oh, yeah.
Two things that I want to acknowledge. One, thank you so much to Sunflower, who left us a review on iTunes. We really appreciate it. We happened to come across it yesterday and we were super excited. So thank you for taking the time to review us on iTunes.
Yeah, and such a sweet message too.
Oh, it was super sweet. And
I was like, oh my God, you think that about it?
I know. And what was the other? Oh, and thank you for those of you who have also left ratings and reviews here on the Facebook page. We really appreciate that. And for the Patreons, we posted content for you yesterday.
It was good stuff.
That was so much fun. Like, I hope that you guys enjoy it because really, I was like, man, this would have been such a fun podcast. But
well, I think that we've got 7 podcast topics within that.
Yeah. So if you guys haven't gone to check that out yet, be sure that you do. We exposed ourselves, to say the least.
It's been a very expositional kind of week. Is that right? It works. Whatever. You get what I mean.
Well, listen, the full moon was yesterday. So on that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, babe. Well, before we get into our topic, which this should be interesting, how was your week anyway?
Is that enough? Is that enough? Can I just laugh about it?
It's very telling.
Yeah, it is very telling. My week this week has been very eventful, very emotionally eventful. And as such, it has led to a lot of different perspectives and insights and opportunities. Yeah, the whole gamut of everything.
Yeah, I had another purge myself this morning. I was like, God dang it, can we be done with this? And it's so funny because, you know, if you guys didn't catch the conversation last week, we talked about coping with the stress of just life. And then also we were asked how we deal with the dark night of the soul, how we navigated that. So that was the discussion. And we joke that every topic we choose, it highlights in our life for those 2 weeks. So
it was very much highlighted.
Sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting week. You know, part of it I attributed to going to my 4-day Reiki retreat, but regardless, even if it was our own spell casting as we do, there was a lot of release this week, which, you know, because of our topic, I was observing the stress that can easily come about from our thoughts. And if we allow it to run wild and, you know, having that awareness to catch yourself and see the emotions or the triggers for what they are and not clinging to them. So
yeah,
it was a doozy. So what are we talking about today, Sugar Pie?
So today we're talking about dealing with someone else's dark night of the soul.
Yeah. And how to cope with the stress of our loved ones, you know, when people around you, when they're going through it.
You sure are going to feel it.
And you feel it. Yeah. So you want to kick start us off, honey? What was coming up for you around this?
Should I just give you my top 5 things, like bullet points? And then we can
But what's the first one? Go.
Don't be afraid
of their emotions.
Well, there's a whole thing. Hi, Josh. There's a whole thing. Let me just list the 5 points, and then we'll come back to definitions of them. Is that fair? Okay. Don't be afraid. Don't judge. Manage your own energy. Try to understand, and just love them. Those are my 5 things.
Okay.
You want to start at
Yes.
the top?
We can start at the top.
Okay.
I will tell you a couple of things that came for me too. And thinking about this was the control of like why we even feel like we need to manage the situation, like why we take on that responsibility. And also what happens when we do sometimes go from supporting into trying to absolutely fix, and how that can rob the person of their own lesson or process and whatever.
Oh, that's all in
so
here.
Let's go.
All right, let's do this. Okay. So the first one, don't be afraid. I said don't be afraid because I've experienced this too. Like I'm always there to help people, and then sometimes when it's my turn, those same people, they back off and they get afraid and like they can't be there for me, and that's fine. I understand it. And surely I have sensed the same thing. But as I dive into that, why I think we start to get afraid is that because we feel the energy of somebody else's dark night of the soul, and then it starts to trigger us. So as we're looking at them going through this thing and having triggers, it starts to bring up our stuff, and then we might trickle into a dark night of the soul and not know how to discern the two. And being mindful of what's your stuff and what's their stuff, so that you don't have to be afraid of what they're going through. You can say, oh, I'm starting to feel afraid because it's triggering this in me. Put that on the shelf, deal with that later. Don't be afraid of what they have, because then you can't support them.
It's interesting you say that, because what it highlights for me is like this underlying selfishness, really, because a lot of times we think when someone we care about is going through something, they're stressed, they're worried, and we're like, oh, we just want to help because we love them, when a lot of times what our motivation is, you're making me uncomfortable, so I want to help you fix this so I'm not uncomfortable anymore.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So like the last thing I had in this paragraph was being able to support your loved one from a place of purity, which I think is essentially what you just said, like being able to be okay with the discomfort of supporting them.
Well, I think that's probably like in all of that what we have to look at. So if you have someone that you love and they're going through something, they're stressed or whatever, and you start to have an emotional response or something comes up in you, regardless if it's you want to save them, you want to hug them, you want to support them, all of these things, like really examining like what it is, like what's coming up for you and why. And is it that you're just trying to take care of your own discomfort that's being triggered by them? Or are you genuinely just trying to hold space? And another thing in that, being afraid of people's upset, I think sometimes the fear is like, we don't know what to do. And we don't want to make it worse for them. And we're like, ooh, like feel like we're on eggshells because like, oh, will this make them uncomfortable? Will I set them off? We are so complicated.
But, and as you say that, like I'm asking the question, I'm like, why? And I feel like the answer is because we don't know how to love. Like that just came up.
Yeah.
Because we don't know how to love, which is so silly because that is.
Well, I mean, listen, look how simple that is though, right? Like love in of itself is just. Yeah. There's like no additives. There's no, it's just.
It just is.
Still, and it just is. Where we overcomplicate it because of our own fear and worry around doing things right and being appropriate and blah, 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 and then worried about ourselves. Honey, we are so complicated. Yeah. But okay. Yeah. So that's number one, right? Like if you have fear or discomfort around someone else's upset or discomfort, really check in with yourself to see what that's about.
Yeah. Sort that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next on Tiffany's list is, because I don't want to like selfishly take up the whole thing, but I'm going to discern.
Yeah, it's all a good conversation.
Yeah. So the next one was don't judge. So as you were saying too, like their journey and their lesson in what they're going through is going to get them to where they need to be, and that might look vastly different from what it is you need to get to where you're going. So to judge what it is they're going through and put like your perspective and your judgments on said thing is never going to make any sense, because that's not your experience and that's not where you're going to go with whatever it is you're going through.
Well, it's funny too, because a lot of times we think like the audacity we have, like we can be so like really, it's like we have nerve a lot of
We do.
times because like we think we know what's best for people, right? Like we get so absorbed in like how we would do it, how we
Yeah.
think it should be handled, you know, and we do judge if they're doing it differently than what makes sense to us. And it's like, you know, again, kind of like slow your roll and look at, are you holding space to be support, or are you trying to take over and control someone else's? Listen, there's a lot of times people do things we don't understand.
Yeah.
And they may be going through their process in a way that makes no sense to us. But I think we all know by now, we all learn differently. Because think about, put yourself in the other shoes, right? Think about when you have gone through something, you were stressed, you were worried, whatever, and someone who cared about you with all of their best intention came and told you what they thought you have to do, and you didn't agree with it, and then they judged you, and then the fight became about that.
And then you were like, you don't even know me.
You don't know me, you're not seeing me, you're not hearing me.
Yeah.
So again,
which again,
consider when you're the one doing that.
Right.
And we all learn differently. I mean, there are some people, listen, I like to, if I recognize something is coming up, it's a lesson, it's an opportunity, I like to just work through it because I don't like resisting. I don't like getting beat up. Went through that with the universe, especially through my dark night. And I'm not trying to be there for that. But there are people in my life that I see, they will keep banging their head over, they will do it again and again. And while to me, I'm like, what? I also understand for some people, that is how they have to get through it.
Yeah.
It's their way. It's their way until it's not. Wait, let's see. Josh said, it feels like a paradox. If I help, I could harm myself by taking on their stuff. If I protect myself, I am cold and I don't care.
Which brings me to my third point.
Yeah, good, because I want to talk about that one.
Yeah, it's good. My third point is managing your own energy. Like knowing what you can do for yourself to balance, whether it's like balancing your emotions, your energies, go outside, exercise, meditate, ground down, because in that space we can find that balance. Because if we help and you take on too much, or you protect and you're too cold, like those are two extremes, and somewhere it has to meet in the middle in order to find that neutrality. And in order to do that, you have to manage your energy. So that is sorting through your stuff of like, your stuff is, why would I take on too much that doesn't belong to me? Like that's your stuff too. And when we protect too hard, that's also our stuff. I've been guilty of protecting too hard and coming off cold. Also, I've been guilty of both of those things. And when we lean into extremes, those are kind of like signals that there's something up with us also. You know, like those are kind of red flags, like, well, why are you taking on that stuff when you don't need to?
Well, exactly what he said too brings up the last two things we talked about a moment ago, fear and judgment. Because one, when we're in that space of like, oh, do I need to protect myself? That's fear-based. And then when we're in the space of like, you know, oh, what if I could harm them, this and that? Again, it's like, it's fear-based, and then we may be judging ourselves. We're overthinking. So one of the things with that, Josh, I think is so important is considering our energy, the stance, the level of consciousness we are going to help from before we step in. Because if you're already in that story of like, oh, I got to protect myself. Oh, what if I, that is the lower mind. Your ego is freaking you all the way out. Whereas like what we talked about in the Patreon thing yesterday, working from the higher mind for our own stuff, we could also access our higher consciousness to help ourselves to be more neutral when we're holding space for others. Because then when we allow ourselves to move into that neutral space, we start to dissipate the right and wrong, the, oh, I'm afraid, and the what if, and do. And if you're managing your own energy first, you're not going to be afraid of taking on theirs. You can allow yourself to still be empathetic without taking on their energy as your own. You can still reach out and hold space without feeling a need to control. So there's like really a benefit to like checking your energy before jumping into the sea of someone else's. And that's just across the board. That's like life in general.
Yeah. Don't try to go into a Trader Joe's at like 6 p.m. on a Sunday or a Monday night when you're not ready for it.
That's a good point, Josh, because I think that comes up for a lot of us, especially people who are empaths, have a lot of fear around like, taking on someone else's stuff.
And even the awareness of that paradox too, I feel like a lot of people don't. They just ride out the emotions that they feel of those exact two things that you stated. People just feel that, and then they act on it exactly like that, versus even being aware of here's how I'm expressing to this person because I'm doing these things. Like, I think that's huge.
I think it goes back to even what you just said, your epiphany, Tiffany, a moment ago, is, when we can even ask ourselves, like, am I holding space or trying to support someone from a space of fear, or am I able to go into this space of support from like a neutral, just space of love?
Yeah.
Josh said, how do you get that across to the other person? What exactly?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Give more detail of what you mean. How do you get what across to the other person?
Hi, Nikki. Welcome.
Hey, Nikki. Hey, girl.
We're on a little bit of a delay too. I think our Zoom is like 10 seconds faster than Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So when the comments come up.
Yeah, so if
there's a little delay. But I do want to say, Yolanda, great plug of leading into how imperative our conversation was for the bonus content.
Yeah.
Because as you were talking about them, like, we talked all about it yesterday, and it was so good, and it was so helpful.
So much fun. Actually, it was so good that Tiffany was exhausted by the end.
I had to go to a park and lay down in the sun just to release and relax.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what Josh says about this.
I know, me too.
But yeah, I mean, so while he's typing that, I would just say again, just to reiterate, this is why, like in the Mind Body Energy Project and in both of our work that we do independently, we do focus a lot on maintaining your own energy, because again, it does just help in all that we do across the board. And, again, it's a lot of times, if we're not managing our space, we have the tendency of unconsciously functioning from these spaces of fear and control and all of these other things without any awareness. So, okay, Josh said, how do you not get emotionally connected to their dark night and let them know you care? Okay, well, I could share this, for example, like, for the last almost 8 years now, like my mom has been grieving. My stepfather passed away. I think it's been 8 years now. I can't even believe that, like 7 or 8 years. And at first it was really hard for me to not do exactly what you said, Josh. Like, I was emotionally connected to what she was going through. I was worried, I was stressed, I was all of these things because of the way that she was grieving. And it came to a point of just having to realize and accept that she had to go through her process the way she wanted to go through it. And there was nothing I could say or do that would change her process until it was her process. And I think that is really the key, is accepting that whatever someone is going through and how they choose to handle it, it is their choice. And so once I freed myself of that responsibility and really had to look at, it doesn't change the fact that I love her. It doesn't change the fact that she is everything in the world. I mean, she's everything. It's my mom, right? I love her more than life. But separate from that, I also know her path is her own, and how her soul is working through that is hers. So what I did say to her at some point is like, I'm here for you. Whatever you need, I'm here. And sometimes it's as simple as that's all you can do, because you continuing to push and push to try to force someone to see your point of view or do it your way will oftentimes just add fuel to the fire. Again, make them feel like they're not being heard, make them feel they're not being validated, make them feel a lot of things that's just going to add to their stress. So, I think we even have to accept within ourselves that sometimes not controlling or trying to does not at all mean that you don't care. You're just respecting someone's choice in their process. Ooh, this hair, really.
It's a slippery slope too, and the not getting emotionally connected. I like how you said not getting emotionally connected to the dark night of the soul, because That's just it. You're emotionally connected to this person, but you're not emotionally connected to their dark night of the soul. Or maybe you are, and maybe understanding that discernment of what you're actually emotionally connected to. And that comes down to examining attachment. Like, where are you at with just attachment in and of itself, and attaching to certain things. And maybe it is attaching to emotionally charged situations, and again, that comes back to our stuff. Like, why is it that there's an emotionally charged situation, all of a sudden I'm all in,
Yeah.
And then I find myself in this conundrum of like, oh, I have to protect or I want to support,
But in that examining of it, I mean, honestly, there was like selfishness of it in my part too. I mean,
sure.
Because there was part of it where I was genuinely concerned for her. I love her. Of course, I don't want to see her hurt. That breaks my heart. But on the other side, I was also triggered that I felt like my relationship with my mom was changing because she was in a different state. Do you see? So I had like my own stuff that was triggered by her grief. And so, I mean, I say that to say there are so many layers to what comes up and why when we see someone we care about and they're suffering. And we, even if they can't see it, we have to be very honest with ourselves about what is going on and how we're perceiving it all. And again, really check ourselves about feeling like we have the right even to control their way. And I know this thing I'll say too, like sometimes there's a fear that comes up for a lot of people. Like, if I don't do enough, if I don't try enough, what if they spiral out of control? Or what if something bad happens to them? I'll feel guilty that I didn't do enough. And the truth is, a lot of times, no matter what we do or say, people are going to do what they're going to do. So we even sometimes have to be very careful of the blame that we put on ourselves for what people would have done regardless of anything that we said or did. And it doesn't mean that we don't love them.
Right. I'm a big proponent for the book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And one of the 4 agreements is always do your best. And I think that if you're living that, you're truly examining what it is you're doing and you're trying to do your best, that's all you can do. And if you did do your best and people do what they're going to do, then that's that, like that kind of reconciles. And then if guilt floods in after that, that's another trigger for us to examine why, like what is that guilt that we're working with if you did everything that you could do and you feel like it was enough.
And I want to point out too that we mentioned that you brought up, Tiffany, in our discussion last week, when we're dealing with our own stress and our own dark night, that we also have to be aware of the level of what we're dealing with and the type of help or support that we may need. And the same is true oftentimes with the people we care about. Sometimes what our loved ones are going through is so out of our range of like how we even know how to be of best support to them. So depending on what their situation is and what they're going through, it may be that you reach out to, a professional, a therapist, somebody, and ask, what is the best way to deal with this? What is the best way to support them through this?
How do you know exactly where to segue me every single time?
Wait.
Okay. Everybody,
but we have comments.
I know, but I don't want anybody to forget where Yolanda was just leading this, because it ushered so perfectly into the next thing.
Honey, this hair is going to drive me crazy today. Okay, so Cheryl said, sun, what's that? Is the sun out where you are today, babe?
The sun is out here. However, it's very tricky because it looks like it's, in San Diego, we're used to very temperate temperatures, and the sun finally came out after like Noah's Ark was built and all the animals shipped down the street. So the sun came out and I was like all, like a light sweat, and I go outside. So I needed a freaking parka. So
it's so cold. Well, again, Tiffany, watch your mouth. We say it's cold when it's 60
I know.
degrees, so
listen, everything's relative. Everything's relative.
So Nikki said, I feel that. My boyfriend lost his grandpa a couple years ago, and I feel like I felt all the levels he's gone through. Yeah.
Listen to our empath podcast.
It's a hard one. And then Josh says, I have someone in my family that is going through their own dark night. The issue I run into is they want to bring me into their dark night. They want a depression buddy in a sense. I don't want to go down their path and what makes them angry. How do I help them? Stay lifted.
Yeah.
Stay lifted.
Yep. You don't have to go there.
No. And just because, I mean, someone wants us to meet them down here doesn't mean we have to agree to it.
Right.
You can still hold space for someone, but choose to stay up here. So I'll bring the example back to my mom again. Like when she was in that space and whatever, I also had to renegotiate my interactions with her. So I would hold space with her. I would prepare my energy before even having conversations with her. That was step one. Like I had to check my energy and my state of mind before I even went into engaging. And then when we did, I would, I was consciously aware in the background of my energy, my triggers, my projections, anything that was coming up in our exchange. And I took the responsibility of managing myself in that and staying as lifted as I could. And if I ever felt so triggered that I knew like I was about to pop, I had to go. Like,
I'm so sorry about that.
I'll talk to you later. And, and I had to keep managing me. It doesn't help anybody when we come down, because then now you have two people that are struggling to come up out of the muck.
Yeah, I like to use the analogy of like somebody's down in a rabbit hole. You don't have to dive down there and like try to bring a ladder or a rope. Like you could stay at the top of it and tell them like, hey, here's a way to get out of the rabbit hole, like give them guidance from up here, like not talking down to them. That's a bad example, but people go in a rabbit hole and they want you to slide down it with them and meet them down there to keep them comfort. But you can look down in the rabbit hole and be like, give them support from there.
Well, when you say that, it gives me the visual too of imagine this family member, whomever your loved one is down in that rabbit hole and it's dark down there and you're up top with a flashlight showing them there's light. That's you staying lifted. And they refuse to open their eyes and they refuse to open their eyes and they refuse to open their eyes. But you stay steady there with that fat flashlight because one day they may decide to take a peek. And when they do and see like, I just had to open my eyes, there's light there. Mm-hmm. Then you can, they may then say to you, hey, can you help me?
Yeah.
And, and sometimes it's that. Sometimes we have to wait till people get to a space that they actually want help.
Mm-hmm.
In a healthy way.
Yes.
Wait, I know you're going to go to your thing. Cheryl said, no sun this week in Southwest Missouri. I'm a Cali girl. I need all the sun. Honey, come back. Come home.
Yeah. But just wait a couple of months because it's cold.
Yeah.
It's cold. So you were talking about how people go through things that like we'll never be able to understand. Like loved ones are going to, and we kind of have to watch them go through these things that don't make any sense. So my next point was try to understand. So asking the person to explain it to you is a good place to start, but also it might be so far removed from what your experience is as an understanding of it that I think seeking other sources related to, if you truly want to understand and help this person, seeking other sources that have actual experience with said thing that you don't understand is a good path to go to like educate yourself on that topic. Because again, just because it's out of your wheelhouse and it seems very foreign doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it doesn't isolate this person as weird or outside of all like an extreme outlier, because I'm sure there's a gamut of that type of thing. It just is not in your wheelhouse. So there's information out there that you could go to try to understand what this person is going through and then help them peel back the layers of these things that you might not understand.
It reminds me of exactly what you're talking about a little earlier too, the judgment aspect. I mean, we're so quick to judge what we don't understand, whether it's we don't understand their issue or we don't understand how they want to handle it. So it's like really catching your judgment is key. And I think it's a really good idea to, inform yourself, educate yourself. And again, like sometimes you may need outside support to support you and supporting them. We don't always have the answers, and it's okay. And sometimes you don't know what to do, and that's okay too. Like, don't beat yourself up because you can't fix them. Sometimes people, they have to go through it their way. They may not be ready yet for support. You may not know what to do, but it comes back to that word you said, at the beginning of this, like love. Like, how can you just love them through it without necessarily trying to control, but be of support?
Mm-hmm.
That's hard.
I don't want to bring it home yet because we have so much time, but I'll bring home my 5 points because you segued into it again.
I did it again?
Yeah. High five.
Top.
Which the last point of my 5 points is just love them. Let them know that you love them, whatever that takes. If it's words, if it's acts of kindness, and also like it benefits both the receiver and the giver. And that comes back to like, if you're giving them love and support, regardless of not even support, because support I feel is kind of loaded with like ways to be doing it, whereas just love, you just is. Yeah, you just be. And it benefits you too, because it brings it back to that point, like you did your best, you did your due diligence, you did your best, like, and that is good enough.
And I think with that, what comes up is expectation, because a lot of times we have the expectation of, if I'm trying, if I did it good enough, if then this should fix them. And if it doesn't, then again, we're like hard on ourselves. So it's like, can you love and hold that space without the expectation of anything other than just, I am loving you up? And it also reminds me of a lot of times when any of us are hurting, sometimes it's just as simple as we just need that. Like we just need to feel seen, heard, supported in some way. We don't want anyone. Think of that, like the times where you're aggravated or you're bothered and you just want to vent. And the last thing you want to hear is someone's freaking advice, right? You're just like, oh, the minute they open their mouth to give you advice, you're just like, I just want to get off my chest. Like, I just wanted to be heard. I just wanted, that's it, So another thing too, I think, and it's situational, is knowing the person, asking, just flat out asking, like, what do you need? What will make you feel supported? Friend, do you want me to just sit here? Do you want me to just shut the hell up and just be in the space with you? That's a good one too. Just ask, because some people.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to have a friend who is like my dark night of the soul parallel. Like we just know how to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And literally we're sitting there next to, like, face to face yesterday. And she was like, I could see all the things going on. Like, I know what she was formulating, and I know she heard me, like I knew all this stuff. And she's like, what do you need from me right now? Do you just want me to listen, or do you want me to like tell you these things? Like, what is yours? And I was like, God, you're so good. But it is so powerful to ask what it is that person needs. And I think that's a huge part of us getting out of our own way in order to support this person.
Yep. Relieving ourselves of thinking we know what's best, and really honoring what they need and what's best for them. Again, granted that it's healthy, not necessarily meeting them down here, but yeah. Josh said, when I don't want advice, I always start the conversation with, I just want to vent.
That's good.
That is good.
Making your needs known. Very important.
It's also good to know for us, when we are the ones that are going through it, know which friend is good for what. Do you know what I mean? Like, listen.
Oh, yeah.
I know, depending on what it is I want to talk about, get off my chest, I know which friend is the friend to call and which ones are not. So you also have to be aware of that too. Because I say that to say, Josh, because there are some people I know where even if I say, I just want to vent, honey, I am still going to get a bag load of advice and shoulda, wouldas, and don't set yourself up. Know your tribe.
Funny.
What else do you have on there, honey?
That's it. Those are my 5 points.
And anyone else, whoever's watching, like, please share with us what comes up for you when you are seeing someone you care about go through a stressful time. How do you guys deal with it? Do you find any challenges in it? Do you have any recommendations around how to best support people? And how do you all like to be supported? Like,
yeah, that's a good one.
About you? What do you like when you're going through it?
And that's a good question to even ask yourself, because until you ask yourself that question, you might not know.
How about that part? And then be aggravated that people do stuff you don't want, and you don't even know what you want.
Yeah. I just want to be hugged. Like, I just want someone to hug me. But you know what sucks about that for me is because I'm so tall that mostly in hugs, like, I'm the towering individual in the hug. So it's like I never feel like I'm fully getting everything.
Aww.
I know.
I have to call Big Mike and see if he'll hug you. You met him, right?
Very briefly, yeah.
Yeah, I have this client, you guys. He's the sweetest peach on the planet, but he's like 7'4". Yeah, he's really tall. So yeah, you give him a call to come with you. What I was gonna say, when I am going through it, it depends on what it is. Sometimes I like solitude because I personally just like to process by myself. And side note, if you have friends that like to process and you know something's wrong with them, but they just want to do it in their bubble, don't personalize it. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Some people like me just need that moment to just give me a minute to just do this on my own. And then I will come out when I'm ready to say, hey, friend, blah, blah, blah. But don't personalize it if somebody doesn't necessarily want to talk right in that moment. Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
And don't personalize it if people are, back to my first point, are afraid to approach you when you want them to.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I have a tendency to do that.
Yeah. And then Nikki says, I always want hugs too. And Josh says hugs are great. Yeah, hugs, depending on what it is. A hug for me is like permission to break down. Because sometimes I will just try to like hold it. And then a really good hug, it's kind of just like, like just let it move. So if you have a hard time allowing yourself to process, sometimes a hug is like that.
Oh, this is interesting. Maybe our next topic, to keep it light, we could do like the languages of hugs.
Honey, no. Oh, yes. For those of you who are not patrons, the bonus content, we did say that we want our next conversation to be really light so that we can all experience 2 weeks of like, woo!
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to the serious stuff. But yeah, so yeah, I think that's pretty much.
What were your 2 points that we started with?
Right. So one of them, we already talked about the control and the supporting versus taking responsibility, putting that pressure on ourselves that we have to fix. We talked about. But the other thing is, one of the things I learned early on in energy work, and I forget which teacher or how it came about, but one of the really big lessons too was the realization that sometimes when we try to intervene too much, and again, we cross the line from support into trying to control and trying to fix for the person, we may be robbing their opportunity to grow. Like, think about the things that you've gone through that you thought were so hard. And while there may have been people supporting you on the sidelines, you were the one that had to go through it to get through it. You were the one that had to make the decisions, that had to, fight the resistance. You were the one that ultimately had to do the work. And on the other side, you're the one that grew from that experience. And you're the one that started, you recognize your own resilience, your own strength. And it can even support you in starting to trust yourself more. It reminds me of dependency. So like a lot of people, I've come across people who have been in long-term relationships, whether it was like they got married young or whatever it is, or just a long relationship. And then this dependency forms in the relationship. And they're so used to that codependency that when the relationship ends, the person doesn't trust or know how to navigate on their own because they haven't had to figure things out on their own for so long. And there's this like hard lesson that they end up coming up against of learning how to trust themselves again, learning how to think for themselves again, all of these like reconditioning things, right? It's kind of the same. Like if we interrupt or intervene too much, sometimes we can also kind of rob people of their experience of seeing their own strength.
I have a great simple analogy for that.
Okay.
What if when Arnold Schwarzenegger was training to be, what was he, Mr. Universe or something? Just hear me out.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Was he Mr. Universe? Somebody help me out here. I don't know. I think so. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's a huge bodybuilder, right?
Right.
Like, getting to the point of the amount of weights that he lifted was hard, and it was probably painful, and it took a lot of discipline and dedication, and he probably hated it a lot of the time. What if somebody was over there like, oh, Arnold, those look so heavy. Let me just take them from you for today. And they kept doing that week after week after week. He would have never been Mr. Universe. Because he wouldn't have lifted the weights that he needed to and trained his body the way it needed to be so that he could win that competition.
I was so afraid of this story, this analogy, and it was so good.
Why were you afraid?
I was like, where in the heck is this going? No, it was really good. It is really good. But
thank you.
It's what we kind of, and again, like, you don't want to spill the beans, but if you guys want to, go to the MB Insiders, I mean, we shared a lot yesterday in this, but what I wanted to say about that is just remembering that what all of us go through, some of the hardest things we go through end up being like, some of the things that change us in the best ways. And again, end up revealing like our strength and our resilience. But even sometimes some of the hardest things we go through, on the other side of it, we recognize that it really helped us to come out of some old pattern or old conditioning that just wasn't working for us anymore. And while it may feel like crap to go through it, that flashlight, top of the rabbit hole. Cheryl said, great analogy. See? High five up top.
Thanks, Cheryl.
For Cheryl. Listen, I was nervous. Let's see. Josh said he was Mr. Olympia.
Oh, okay.
And
thank you, Josh.
Nikki said, this week I've been digging deep with the 22 days of transformation. Oh, yes. And noticed a lot of things within myself. And I feel like I'm relearning to trust my own voice again. I think I've become too codependent. Honey, that's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. I love when we start having like our own insights and self-realizations, those aha moments that could only come, like we're the ones that have to look at it. But that's really, really cool, babe. Keep us posted.
Yeah, and it's great that you notice the codependency because it's a very comfortable place until it isn't. But then even when it isn't, Tiffany. It's still comfortable. What?
I said I'm codependent on Tiffany. No, seriously though.
I'm so codependent on Yolanda to do technological things. Otherwise, this thing would not exist.
True story though. I almost did become because, I did a podcast by myself for years. And then when we started the Mind Body Energy Project, it was so much fun. Like we have so much fun doing it that a part of me started like dreading doing my own podcast. Cause it's like, I like it when me and Tiffy laugh. And I had to really snap myself out of that because I could have fallen down that rabbit hole. Nikki said, true that. Yeah. So I think we covered all the points. Hopefully that was helpful today. Listen, it was a great topic. I'm glad we explored it. But honey, I am glad.
I'm glad we're coming out the other side of it.
Do you guys have any suggestions or recommendations for what you want to talk about next week? And we want to keep it lighthearted. We want to talk about some like fun, lighthearted things because if you haven't heard us say it before, whatever topic we choose, we personally have that thing highlighted in our life for like the next 2 weeks.
And not even by choice. Probably a subconscious choice because we want to examine the topic.
Yeah.
But man, I wouldn't have brought this stuff on myself. But we do it for you.
Yes.
We do it for you.
We love you. And it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it really has been an interesting week of purging and using the tools that we've talked about.
In comes Josh with the simplistic thing.
Josh for the win.
Yeah, for the win. Thank you, Josh.
Maybe it's his recovery. He's balancing it out because he's the one that chose this topic too.
There we go.
He created his own yin and yang.
You
got it, Josh. What brings you joy?
I like that.
Ooh.
Kittens bring me joy.
Yes.
Kittens bring me a lot of joy.
Yeah, they do. Like she almost had full-blown meltdown about this cat that was in yoga class.
I went back the next day to try to think about adopting it. And I was actually on my way to see Yolanda. I couldn't because I was going to be out of town that weekend, the following weekend, and then for a week. And I was like, I can't do that to a 3-month-old kitten. And I still to this day think about that kitten.
Oh my God.
It was 7 months ago.
Her and that cat. And the cat, like she sent me a picture of the cat from yoga class. Now, why the cat was in yoga class? I don't know.
Because it was kitten yoga.
Kitten yoga.
Go with kittens.
Hey, just like the goat yoga that people do. I'm like, listen,
yeah.
I can't because they'll like little poop. They'll poop on you.
I know.
I don't want that. Cheryl said animals and babies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little kids are the
well,
best.
I'm not even going to dive into this because we got to talk about it next week.
What? Oh, what brings you joy?
Yeah.
Well, you guys, yeah. So start thinking about that. I guess this is a good time. What brings you joy? And you guys bring us joy. Like really, truly, you have no idea how much we love
true.
this group and how much we love yip yapping with you guys. So thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for everything. Thank you. Just thank you
for
from the bottom of our hearts.
Being open to being on this journey with us. It's not easy.
For sharing. So,
this might feel like great to be here with us doing this, but it's not an easy step to take. And we acknowledge that.
Yeah. The self-work. I always say it takes a strong soul to sign up to do the work on themselves, honey. Because it is not for the faint of heart.
It's true. And remember also that not a lot of souls signed up for that.
Right.
This time around. So yeah, maybe amongst the minority, but there's value in rarity.
But I think about it this way too. Like when I first started doing this work and working on myself and going through my dark night and blah, 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 there was a part of me that thought, the part of what kept me going is, one, I don't want to keep repeating the same lessons. Two, I don't want to keep going through the same patterns and cycles, especially if they're hindering my path and my growth. Those were big motivators. But also there was something so like humbling and felt like what a gift that just by working on ourselves, we are contributing to the shifts of the collective. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I think about like the people who are doing this work on themselves and the differences in what they will instill in their children, their grandchildren, and then what those generations are going to be like. And how collectively more people are starting to wake up to this idea of self-healing and alternative modalities and all of these things. And what, as this keeps spreading, like what that's going to do to us collectively, you know, like, it's kind of exciting.
This is funny. I can't wait for you to read it.
He said strong soul. Well, then I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yes,
way to close the loop. Way to close the loop, Josh. Nice work.
Oh, man. That was a good one.
It was.
Good morning. Okay. So I guess that's all for today.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
We'll see you guys next week to talk about joy. But anything that comes up for you, you guys know, post it in the comments. We always respond. And if you're watching the recording of this, anything that comes up for you, please share. We love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.